Hey there, this is Johnny, and this is a video series aimed to help me overcome my own mental roadblocks, aimed for my future self, because sometimes our own advice is the hardest to take. I'm just going to be sharing some of the things to my future self and to anyone else, of course, that's watching, some of the things I've been working for myself, in the hope that, my future self will take a look at it and actually, take his own damn advice. So with that said, I'm going to talk today about anxiety. And this is something that I've been really struggling with and something I've been really working with for a long time, all throughout school to, going through university, then going into a job. It's really followed me throughout my professional career, and it's made it quite difficult for me to perform the actions that I know I need to do. So here's what's been working for me recently, right? So it's a concept similar to butterfly nets, right? And I'm going to explain the link between this and butterfly nets in a second. So what I do is I take around a notebook, or sometimes if I don't have a notebook on hand, I'll take around my phone. And what I'll do is I will take a log or a mental note of when I feel down or when I get into a state of anxiety, right? And then when I do, I'll first of all write down, why am I feeling this way, or what am I feeling? And if it is anxiety, if it's something else, then, I've got, something else for that. And I'm not going to discuss that today. But if it is anxiety, then I'll start writing down, okay, well, what's the thought that I'm having? Why am I anxious? And sometimes it'll take a while for me to dig this up, right? Because sometimes, we get very lost in our own thoughts, at least me personally, and it can take a moment to actually just realize, okay, wait, hold on, what actually caused this in the first place? So I'll give an example, right? In my previous workplace, for example, what I would do is I would, for example, feel just anxious or scared because, I was too afraid to ask for help, right? So what I'd do is I'd write down, okay, I'm scared to ask for help. And then I would write down, I'm scared to ask for help because I feel like I'll look stupid. I don't want to look stupid because, that I feel like that's a bad thing. And, if people think I'm stupid, I'll get fired. And then I won't be able to, make any sort of income. I won't be able to pay rent. And then I'll be homeless and then I'll die, right? And this is really extreme and it seems really ridiculous. But I feel like I'm not the only one, right? There's no way I'm the only one that experiences these sorts of thought patterns. It's just that, sometimes we're not willing to admit it, or we just haven't really thought about it hard enough. And so when you take a look at these sorts of thought patterns and you look at them more objectively, and this is why I really like writing it down, even if it's not on a piece of paper, then at least on some sort of written form or written document, because then that way it's much easier to see things from a third person perspective. Or what else I'll do is sometimes I'll imagine taking those words, those thought patterns into somebody else's mouth. So I'll just picture some random friend and I'll have them come to me and they'll say, hey Johnny, I'm anxious at work. So why anxious at work? Because, I feel like, I don't want to ask for help because I feel like I look stupid, etc., right? And then when somebody else comes, I don't know if you've noticed it, but sometimes somebody will ask you for help. And from your perspective, it's always so much easier to see why, or just logically see how the thoughts they're having are much more irrational, right? So we get into these thought patterns, at least in my experience, and they're so very irrational, and we don't even know why we're having them because they happen so fast, right? These are really trained thought patterns. We have them a lot of the time, and so we never really question them. And so, in the current example, now that I'm self-employed, subjectively one could argue that, things are a little bit more stressful, things are a little bit more up and down, for example, right? And so this has been something that I've been struggling with tremendously, right? So, for example, a client, will say something not so great through email or on Slack or whatever. And so what I did is I wrote it down. I said, okay, well, why is that making me feel anxious? And then I would think to myself, okay, well, I think that they'll want to leave, they will think badly of me, and then it'll be impossible for me to obtain new business, and then I'll be unable to keep the lights on, I won't be able to pay rent, I will become homeless, and then I'll die, right? And so I remind myself of these sorts of thought patterns so that first of all I can see how ridiculous they are, and then second of all really so I can take a look at them and sort of reframe them, right? Because at the end of the day, I think the key thing for myself to remember, and hopefully for my future self, if you're watching this, is to remember that anxiety doesn't help, especially up to a certain point, right? Obviously, we need to have some sort of fear. We need to have some sort of anxiety to make sure that we don't do stupid things and that we don't run in front of cars. We don't try and harm people, right? Because, if we didn't have any sort of fears of repercussions, then, we'd be quite unhinged as individuals and we just roam around society and do, not so great things. So it's important to remember, first of all, that fear has its place and anxiety has its place. But, you'll know that if you are exceeding that sort of threshold of usefulness, if, it makes it very difficult to get other tasks done, for example, right? So for me, sometimes if I get into like a really anxious state, then I genuinely can't do any more work, right? I'm just so flustered and I'm so in my own head that it becomes really, really difficult for me to actually perform the tasks that are necessary to alleviate the situation, right? Because ultimately, the thing that I have to remember is that anxiety doesn't especially beyond that point, doesn't help, right? I have two choices. First one is to do something about the situation that's causing said anxiety, or two, I can just kind of wallow in that. And then that either does not make the situation any better, or it'll actually make things worse because I'll just let the problems fester, right? So, in that sort of situation where, I've received not so great feedback from a client that I'm working with, in that sort of situation, the only thing that I can really do is to try and rectify the situation as quickly as possible, right? It does not help for me to sit and think, oh my God, what's going to happen? Like, what am I going to do? Because the only antidote is to take action, right? And so this is something that, I daily try and remind myself of, even when I'm not, even if I'm feeling okay in the moment. This is an activity I'm trying to remind myself of, and this is why I'm recording this video, because if you teach it, apparently you learn things twice. So I'm recording this for my future self to remember that anxiety, except in extreme situation. I mean, I can't even think of an example where it would actually help out, right? Panicking in most situations does not help. I think NASA astronauts can attest to that, right, in extreme circumstances. So it's important to remember that action is the main antidote. And this is something that I remind myself of daily. And these thought patterns are things that I review daily so that I'm ready when these negative thought patterns start to arise again, right? I don't know if you've ever done that sort of drill where you take, like somebody, like, I don't know, it's like a reaction speed test, for example, right? And so a friend will come up to you and say, hey, check out your reaction speed. And so, okay, fine. So they'll hold up a pen in front of you and you have to catch it, right? And of course, I'm doing it to myself, obviously. So this is ridiculous and this is silly. But like if they do it up to here, that's doable, right? You can react to that. But if they do it up here, for example, then it actually gets quite hard, and I actually find myself dropping it, right? And so you almost want to think of this pen as your own thoughts, right? And because your thoughts happen so fast, it's almost as if like it's your friend like holding it here, and it can just slip past you and get you into an emotional state that's really not constructive to your overall growth and development without you even realizing. So by me actually, I think, my current theory is that by writing it down and being conscious of it and reminding myself of these thought patterns that don't really serve me, on a daily basis, if not on a daily basis, then at least every other day, then at least when those thoughts, start to happen again, especially if they're not rational, right? Especially if they're not rational, then I'm much more better placed to be able to react to it because, similar to when you play that game with your friend, if you, as you start playing that game, you start like predicting when they're going to next make their move and drop the pen. So even though your reaction speed hasn't actually changed at all, you are just starting to become a little bit more proactive about making sure that they don't happen. And, even if you do, quote unquote, drop the pen or miss it and you end up in a negative state, at the very least, you're able to then take yourself out of that sort of negative state of mind, take things from a much more rational perspective, and overall just improve your mood and just improve your overall mental well-being. So this is something that has been helping me quite a lot. Hopefully, my future self, you do watch this and you're still doing this, right? And of course, if you have anything else that helps you and you think that this is a roundabout way of doing it, because it's actually quite a lot of effort. I think this is something, again, to remember is that it's quite a lot of work to do this. And, I'm a sort of person that up to now has been, I've always taken quite good health, I've always taken quite good care of my physical health. So I exercise regularly. I think I eat quite healthily compared to a significant number of people. But when it came to my mental health, I really didn't do much, right? There was not much, a lot of self-care and that sort of dedication. I think you almost have to treat your mental health as something as sacred as your physical health, because they do impact each other. On days where I don't feel as good, I definitely feel it. When I go to the gym, I don't perform as well. I don't feel like working out as much. I don't have as much energy. When you get mentally drained, it can, I think, affect you physically. And I think I've seen research on it. I haven't actually seen any of the papers, but I'm pretty sure, anecdotally, this is definitely something that I felt. And on days where I'm able to regulate my emotions a lot better, it's definitely helped me improve my mood overall. So hopefully, my future self, please watch this again at some point. If you think that you've got some better methodologies than this, let me know. Record another video, and hopefully, people who discover this maybe find this helpful. But this has been helpful for me. I'm going to be continuing to do this, and just update you on how I find this. But